Module 1, Philosophy and Ethics. As coaches, we want to build an athlete-centered coaching philosophy. Some of the ingredients as we build that philosophy include improving the retention of our athletes, focusing on short-term learning or the process as opposed to long-term goals or the end result. We want to help our athletes build confidence each day, and we want to make wrestling fun. Let's talk a little bit about each of these areas. One way to make wrestling fun is to use the USA Wrestling core curriculum. You'll notice here that there are lists of drills and games, so if you go to themat.com, click on Coaches and Core Curriculum, and when this page pops up, you'll be able to click on any of the activities and there'll be a video tutorial showing you how to conduct each of these games or activities. Improving retention is an important part of a coach's role. In order to improve retention, I think it's important to look at a few of the statistics around athletics in America. Currently, 70% of American youth are turned off of competitive sports by age 13, and we want to dig into a little bit about why that is. When you talk to parents, almost 3/4 of the parents will say that they enrolled their athlete into the sport specifically so they can have fun. However, when you talk to coaches, 55% will say that they've experienced parents yelling negatively at their kids. The numbers just don't add up. It's extremely important that we make sure as a coach we can provide a buffer from overzealous parents for our athletes and also communicate to the parents exactly what it is that we're shooting for. The majority of the time, it's to allow the kids to have fun so that they stay in our sport. Here's 4-time NCAA champion Kyle Dake talking a little bit about how his family helped improve his retention so that he could have fun in the sport.
Actually, I decided I wanted to wrestle full-time. I didn't want to play baseball anymore in 8th grade. And it was halfway through the season, and I was like, Dad, I think I'm going to quit. And he goes, nope. And I was like, what? Why not? He goes, you have to finish the season. You know, you have to fulfill your commitment. And I'm glad he made me do that just because, you know, it really set the tone for the rest of my life. I became a very committed person, and once I had my eyes set on something, you got to go all the way through it. You can't just cop out whenever you want to.
Continuing into improving retention, we want to talk about allowing young athletes to develop into higher levels of competition. It's very difficult, but in our society, many times we'll start an athlete in their first year practicing 2 days a week and then send them to 5 or 6 national level events in that first year. We want to allow these young athletes to develop into those higher levels of competition and not force them into it. That'll allow them to learn more about the sport, and when the higher levels of competition arrive, they'll be able to have more fun at it. It's important to note that girls tend to drop out of sports 2 times more than boys, so it's extremely important that we find ways to encourage our young girls to stay in our sport. We want to make sure that as a coach we develop team standards that are organized and also communicated early in the season. Typically, when we organize and communicate these team standards and team rules early in the season to both the athletes and the parents, if a situation pops up later in the year where someone breaks that rule, they'll understand what they've done and they'll understand the repercussions of their actions. It's also important that we enforce these rules, but we remain flexible. Each certain circumstance will be up to the coach on how they handle that situation. In order to build confidence every day from mistakes, we need to learn from them. Here's world champion and 1996 Olympian Les Gutches talking a little bit about how his family helped him build confidence from mistakes.
As an athlete, I always, told myself that if I made a mistake, it only stayed a mistake if I didn't learn from it. And so I would go back, I would look through the video, I would analyze the situation, I'd get with my coaches, I'd get in the practice room and put myself in that situation time and again. I'd use visualization to try to go back and correct the mistake. And I really felt like mistakes were learning opportunities, and that it was only a negative thing if I didn't circle back and really become better because of that mistake. And so if you really look at it that way, and this is hard to see at the time, mistakes can be a positive thing. And of course, as a coach, when I was at Oregon State, I try to relay that same thing to my athletes, that we really needed to break it down and think about it objectively and get over the emotional part of losing or getting scored on or getting pinned, and look at the problem and work the problem. And that was my strategy.
Les brings up some really good points on this slide, that emotions tend to be a big part of learning through our sport. If we lose a match, if we've made some mistakes in a match, the emotions at the time are extremely high. Sometimes it's better as a coach or as a parent to step back, allow the athlete to calm down, and get control of their emotions before we come up with some ideas on ways that they can improve the areas that maybe they didn't perform as well in. Improving retention also means that we teach and we reward values. It's extremely important that we know what kind of values we want to teach our kids, and we show them those values every day. We also want to explore new ways to organize youth sport. One way that we've done that is with USA Wrestling Skills Academy concept. The concept is instead of a full day of wrestling tournaments, we would start off in the morning with perhaps a Greco-Roman tournament in a four-man round robin. Each athlete would get 3 Greco-Roman matches, and then in the middle of the day, we would have a 2-hour technique clinic. Bring in a local college coach or a high school program that's had a lot of success, and have them teach for about 2 hours in the middle of the day. And then we could conclude the day with a freestyle 4-man round robin for another few matches for each of the athletes. We'd be able to start the day, get the day over, and still be able to send kids home so they can watch a football game or have some time with family and friends later in the day. These are some great ways that we can explore organizing youth sports in order to attract more athletes to our sport and to keep them longer. R&R is something a good friend of mine, Gary Mayab in Missouri, talks about frequently. It's recruiting and retaining, right? Each day we need to, as coaches, focus on the recruitment of athletes into our program and ways to retain the athletes that we've already got. It's also important that we build a culture of ethics, sportsmanship, and fair play. Nothing's more important to the athletes than seeing their coaches and parents specifically handle difficult situations in a positive way. Here's Olympic gold medalist and Hall of Fame coach Dan Gable talking a little bit about ways that we can improve retention and build quality in our athletes.
So do not let your kid leave the sport because he's too nervous. Overcome the nervousness, because you know what's really the value of that is going to take him high in a profession, take him high in a family. Because all of a sudden when things get tough in a profession, things get tough in the family, and they're going to get tough, that you don't run from the problems, that you actually are there and you can handle them. And it's important for youth parents to make sure they know that there's certain situations you can work through.
We also want to identify, model, and teach positive values to our athletes. These core values include physical fitness, mental well-being, and social interaction. Physical fitness includes an active lifestyle. This active lifestyle can certainly help delay the development of chronic diseases. America right now faces a horrible issue with childhood obesity, and wrestling, who traditionally is used for cutting weight and weight management issues, can be the sport that really helps athletes understand proper weight management and not weight cutting. It's important that we have goal-focused training programs. Certainly we're looking at goals, but those goals can be small goals that help us reach the ultimate goals at the end of the season. It's also important that we teach our athletes nutritional values and moderation, weight management, not weight cutting. Here's women's national freestyle coach Terry Steiner talking a little bit about short-term learning as opposed to long-term goals.
It's always process-oriented. We talk about it all the time about being, if you take care of the details of how to win a wrestling match, the outcome will take care of itself. But we have to take care of the details. What do I need to do? How do I warm up in the morning? You know, let's back up. Okay, how did I make weight? Did I make it the right way? Okay, after weigh-ins, how did I rehydrate myself? Did I get a workout in after our hydration? You know, did I get a good night's sleep? When I woke up in the morning, did I get a good breakfast in me? Did I get a great warm-up? You know, did I get refreshed after my warm-up? You know, where was I when I was getting in my pre-match ritual? I mean, what was I doing? Was I around the right people? Was I in the place I needed to be in? Once the match starts, what are my thoughts? What do I need to do to get the first point on the board? You know, and once I have that lead, what am I going to do next? I mean, if you win enough seconds of that match, you win the match. So it's about focusing on the details all the way along. The outcome will take care of itself.
Certainly, this coaching philosophy has helped Coach Steiner. The women in 2014 took a bronze medal at the World Championships in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Another key core value of our sport is providing mental well-being for our athletes. We want each athlete to be able to develop a positive self-concept and self-worth. We want them to be able to manage not only their successes but their disappointments. That's our conduct before, during, and after matches. Even if an athlete has a tendency to maybe blow up if they didn't perform as well as they wanted to, or maybe they didn't get the win, it's important that as coaches, once they've had a chance to cool down, we discuss with them and talk to them about strategies that they can better manage both the disappointments and successes in their career. It's also important to note that athletes have higher academic and occupational achievement statistically than non-athletes. So our sport can really benefit our kids in terms of better grades and getting a better job down the line. Social interaction is also an important part of our sport. Athletes will tend to learn to work as a team, and as coaches, we can help come up with team-building exercises that will allow the athletes to understand more of what it takes to work as a team. They'll learn about sportsmanship. One of the greatest things in our sport is that we shake hands at the beginning and the end of every match. It wishes our opponent good luck, and it also tells them that we appreciate the effort that they put into preparing for this moment. We can fight hard during the competition sequence, whether it's 6 minutes in a high school match or 7 at college, but it's important to know that sportsmanship is key. It also allows athletes to earn respect for others. Each athlete that steps on the mat has put a lot of time and effort into this process, and we should respect them for the effort that they put into it. We do tend to notice fewer behavioral problems in athletes, students who tend to be on the wrestling team or participate in sports in general. Those fewer behavioral problems come out because of things like discipline, structure, learning from a coach, and learning respect for the other people. We also think it's really important that we build positive relationships with adults. Athletes who work with a coach learn to come up with concepts where they can talk to a coach about problems that they're having. They can ask for advice. They can say, this is an issue that I'm currently facing, and a coach can help them structure ways to set small goals in order to improve and reach those long-term goals. Why do wrestlers make the best employees? Forbes magazine has an article out, and it talks about with other sports, an athlete can go home after a practice or after a game and relax. Wrestlers don't often do that, usually because of weight management requirements. They have to maintain their focus and their drive around the clock, sometimes for years at a time. As a coach, we want to model and teach appropriate attitudes. We want athletes to be able to control their emotions in those frustrating situations. These situations can happen in a lot of different areas. Try to teach in these learning situations, whether it's in a practice and an athlete becomes frustrated, whether it's in a competition, or perhaps it's something with team travel. We're on a bus to a tournament and something comes up where it frustrates the athlete and maybe they act in a certain way that's not acceptable. Those are all great opportunities for coaches to pull the athlete aside and explain to them why their conduct isn't acceptable and ways that we'd like to see them improve that conduct. We also want to abide by the referee's decisions. Certainly that's not easy for anybody who's been in a coaching profession or a parent who's watched a coach or watched an official sometimes make a call that could be questionable. But it's important that we teach the kids, both in concept and also in application, that it's important to abide by those decisions. Certainly we have an opportunity to speak with an official and tell them that we may not agree with their call or we'd actually like to get more information about it. And we will talk about that a little bit later on in the bronze course. It's important to also acknowledge all talent levels. Sometimes a coach has a tendency to work with either the elite wrestlers in the room or maybe he's trying to build up the novice wrestlers in the room, but wrestlers from beginning, middle to elite level. Here's the men's national freestyle coach, Bruce Burnett.
We've had some parents over the course of time, I think you can see it in a lot of kids sports, you know, that just get a little over anxious, a little overzealous, and really the way you approach them becomes very important because they're antagonistic to begin with. And so you just try to bring them back to it's about your son doing well, and let's support the youth of America, and it's truly not about the winning and the losing. And honestly, every parent understands that, so they just get caught up in the moment sometimes too.
What I truly like about Coach Burnett's clip here is that he talks about the parents understand what acceptable behavior is and what unacceptable behavior is. So the parents understand what's going on. It's just that a lot of times during competition, we get emotional. At that point, it's extremely important for the coach on how he approaches the parent. Sometimes maybe he needs to give it a little bit of time and let the parent cool down before he comes up and has a talk with them. Sometimes it's important that he just grabs them in that situation so that they can't use that overzealous nature to do any more damage to the younger athlete. So again, this is a very touchy situation. It's very difficult to have a good balance here, but it is a coach's opportunity to work with a parent to make sure that everybody knows we're on the same page. We're here for the benefit of the kids, and we want to see good long-term effects. One way that a coach might decide to help a parent understand a little bit of the situation that might be going on is a toolkit from Play Positive through Liberty Mutual Insurance. This particular toolkit is a 100-point exercise. You could give this to your parent and say, here's 100 points, fill out which one, where you would assign points in this particular PDF. Where would you put the points in terms of importance to the parent? Is winning extremely important? Would you give that 30 points or 40 points? How important is it that your athlete or your son or daughter gains increased self-confidence or has life lessons or has fun or makes friends? As the parent fills out this form, a lot of things will start to develop. You can also have the athlete fill out the same form and then compare them with the parent. A parent might say that winning is 40 or 50 or more points, where an athlete might say that winning is only 5% of what they really focus on. The athlete might want to make friends, have fun, and learn more about the sport, whereas the parent might focus more of that time and effort on winning or earning college scholarships. Once the parent understands the goals of the athlete, it'll be a little bit easier for that parent to communicate properly with the athlete in the future. Play Positive also has a tremendous amount of toolkits both for parents and coaches, and I'd encourage you to go to their website to check those out. Modeling and teaching appropriate attitudes. Certainly you can see that in this photo, Coach Brands is pretty excited. Why is he so excited? Well, I took a 4-hour dual meet, tri-dual, and I put a heart rate monitor on myself just to determine the level of coaching stress that I would go through. What we found was that over 4 hours, my average heart rate range was between 80 and 173 beats per minute. When we did the math, we found out that that was the equivalent stress of a 130-pound man running almost 16 and a half miles. That's the kind of stress that parents and coaches deal with during competition. And this isn't positive stress. This isn't me going out and running 16 and a half miles. This is anxiety and stress creating a similar type of emotional stress. When we notice these kind of situations, sometimes it helps us deal with it. We know that we're going through a high stress level or a high level of anxiety. If we're aware of that when an official makes a call that's questionable or when a situation happens that we didn't expect, if we're aware that we are under stress, sometimes it'll help us deal with that situation better. We do have a responsibility for ethical behavior as a coach with officials. It's extremely important because we expect the officials to make a professional call, and the official has every right to make sure that we ask about the concern with a professional question. It's also important to understand that the majority of calls that you argue with an official will not be overturned. If you know that going in, maybe we can phrase things a little bit differently as we approach an official. Here's Olympic gold medalist Jordan Burroughs talking about preparations for dealing with officials.
When I have questionable calls in matches, I always prepare for them. We prepare for them each day in practice. We know that the calls might not always go our way, especially when you're wrestling in a different country. A lot of people don't like America. So for me, I just always try to prepare for it, know that I need to distance myself from each opponent. When you're beating a guy 5-0, it's really hard for the refs to influence the match. So the closer it is and the closer you let your opponent stay in the match, the more easy it is for the ref to become involved. So I try to dominate my opponent, score as many points as often as I can, and don't allow the refs to have any type of influence.
And it's great to see such a successful athlete talking about not letting the ref influence the match. If we're dominating our opponent, it shouldn't be a problem. But we deal with that during practice. We plan that during our practice times so that if that happens during competition, we're able to take care of the situation and handle it in a professional manner. How would we approach an official? For example, an official makes a call that says that the athletes were out of bounds. Maybe we don't agree. First of all, I think it's important that we understand our state of arousal. We're going to be anxious. We've put a lot of work into this, and as coaches, we want to win. So it's important to understand that we're pretty vested in this situation. I think it's important that we know what questions to ask the official and understand that no one wins an argument. What kind of a question could we ask? With the out of bounds call, what we might ask the official is, "Excuse me, sir, could you just tell me, because I wasn't able to see in the mat position, were both of the athletes completely out of bounds, or did one of the athletes still have a foot on the line? Because I thought I saw a foot on the line, but you had a better vantage point." If we phrase that to an official, the official will start to think, I wonder if that foot was on the line or if they were completely out of bounds. And again, from his perspective, he might have thought that they were completely out of bounds. He'll explain that to you, but he'll also appreciate the fact that you've asked him a professional question, and he'll think about that call and might even pay more attention to it the next time that out of bounds situation occurs. Here's a great audio clip from Andrew Carnegie talking about why no one wins an argument.
I've come to the conclusion that there's only one way under high heaven to get the best of an argument, and that is to avoid it. Avoid it as you would avoid rattlesnakes and earthquakes. 9 times out of 10, an argument ends with each of the contestants more firmly convinced than ever that he is absolutely right. You can't win an argument. You can't, because if you lose it, you lose it, and if you win it, you lose it. Why? Well, suppose you triumph over the other man and shoot his argument full of holes and prove that he is non compos mentis. And then what? You will feel fine, but what about him? You've made him feel inferior. You've hurt his pride. He will resent your triumph. And a man convinced, against his will, is of the same opinion still.
Great words of advice. We want to talk about ethics in all facets of wrestling. It's important to know that USA Wrestling has a code of conduct for all of our coaches. We expect them to follow these 10 responsibilities. First, we expect coaches to acquire and implement the most current knowledge of rules, strategies, and teaching methods. You're doing that right now by taking our bronze certification course. We want to structure a safe environment at all times. While we can't always protect our athletes in every situation, we should think ahead of time, making sure that our environment is safe and that we're doing everything we can to protect our athletes. We expect coaches to work closely with parents, administrators, and community members to promote athletics as a positive experience for our young people. We also want to make sure that coaches have the welfare of the athletes as the primary concern at all times. I often tell people, instead of 300 slides for a bronze program, if I only had 2 slides, the first slide would be, if it's good for the athlete, it's probably a good decision. The second one is just be a good person. If you're a good person and you're trying to make sure that you're taking care of the athletes, you're probably going to be a successful coach. We also want to make sure that coaches promote effective communication. And again, that's with parents, administrators, athletes, and community members. We also expect coaches to serve as leaders and model in the development of appropriate conduct for the athlete, both in and out of the sport setting. Sometimes it's easy on a big win to maybe gloat or be very excited, but we also want to appreciate the fact that in a negative situation, and sometimes we have to deal with that, we want to make sure that we develop ourselves and conduct ourselves the right way. We want to use strategies in practice and competition that reflect fairness within the spirit of the rules. We want to keep the concepts of winning and losing in proper perspective. We want to enforce team policies with fairness and consistency, also with appreciation for individual differences. By throwing an athlete off of a team for maybe breaking one of your team rules, maybe they were drinking alcohol or underage, or there was a drug issue, or maybe they'd missed too many practices. In certain situations, we might want to kick the athlete off the team. But sometimes it's important to understand that maybe this athlete needs wrestling, and maybe we can still develop that athlete and get them to come around and make better decisions. So it's up to the coach to enforce those policies with fairness and consistency. It's also important that we become knowledgeable of the association's policies and ensure that the regulations are upheld. We'll talk about some of the USA Wrestling policies later on that are specific to this particular facet. Now we'll start the questions for Chapter 1. Do you remember what % of American youth are turned off of competitive sports by age 13? That's right, 70% of our athletes will be turned off of competitive sports by age 13. Everything that we do in terms of retaining and recruiting our athletes is extremely important to help athletes get to that next stage of competition and experience through sport. Here's a true and false. Some athletes might struggle to learn techniques if their agility skills have not fully developed. True. Some athletes just have not developed physically to the point where the skills that you want them to learn are actually able to conduct those particular drills. So we want to be very careful that we don't try to take an athlete, maybe a young athlete who's not super coordinated, and then try to teach them an extremely skilled move. It's important to make sure that we know the agility level of our athletes and teach techniques to their agility level. A coach's role in wrestling is to help teach which of the following skills. Do you remember this from the chapter? That's right, all the above. We want to make sure that our athletes understand the importance of physical fitness for life, social interaction, and mental well-being. True or false? When coaches show emotional control in tense and frustrating situations, athletes can learn from that example. That's right, that's true. Those athletes will also learn from an example from a coach if they don't handle themselves well. It'll just be a bad lesson for them to learn. True or false? Coaches can use goal-setting exercises to improve communication with parents and athletes. True. We demonstrated that with the Play Positive 100-point goal sheet from Liberty Mutual Insurance. True or false? Yelling at an official for a bad call is an effective way to get the call overturned. That's right, that's a false statement. Usually when we yell at an official for a bad call, they're going to stick to their guns. They won't make a change. Even if they do make the change, they're going to be upset about the situation, and it might cost us a call down the road. True or false? Winning at all costs is all that matters in developing an athlete. That's right, that's a no-brainer. False. Winning at all costs is not what matters. We focus on the process to help the athletes improve and learn skills that are going to help them both on and off the mat. That's the end of Module 1. Thanks very much for your attention, and we're excited to bring Module 2 to you right now.